Heidly ho, neighborinos. My name is Kyle, and I am here with Danny. I'm here with Danny. I'm here with Danny
Indeed.
in Flanders, apparently. And I
Oh,
am here talking today about Powers of X, issue number 5.
Anywhere he can breathe underwater and go flying through the air. The noble submariner, prince of the deep, floating deadly demons.
Last week we talked about House of X issue number 5. A lot of things happened. We learned about resurrection. We learned about new and old mutants and obscure mutants coming together, making things. People with gold balls, if you will.
yep, the goldenest.
The goldenest of balls. We learned that Krakoa just finally became officially, according to the UN, a nation state. So that's exciting. A lot happened last week. It was a long episode.
Yeah, I mean that issue was action-packed with just plot twists and new revelations and returning of old and new faces. It was a lot for just one issue. You could have seen the content in that stretched out over a whole story arc. That's what I've been saying from the beginning. Is a lot of this stuff, like these individual issues, many writers could stretch it out long arcs to the very end. But Hickman, he's like, I'm gonna jam pack each one, bam, 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 back to back, and it's been delightful riding this ride with him. The whole
Yeah. I've had to reread a lot of them.
Oh yeah,
Just
there's a lot.
dense.
Yeah, tons of content. You could easily overlook things. Even when we go over them, I'm still like, oh, you know what? I get that now. Like I see what he was doing there. I didn't notice that, but now I'm picking it up. I'm getting what you're saying.
Yes. So let's do this. Let's get into it. You ready? You ready for
Oh, yeah.
this? All right.
Let's dive right in.
Yeah, let's do it. So we started off at, because this is Powers of X, or Powers of 10, if you will. We start off at year 0, year 1. We're in Dallas, Texas, and we're met with Forge. And Forge is handing Xavier a glass of whiskey. And it is important to note that Xavier has old Cerebro
And his
with
paralyzed.
him. And he's chairing it right now.
Yeah.
He's living that chair life.
He's rocking his wheels.
And they're just discussing Cerebro. Forge is like, you're on the 3rd generation. Xavier's like, nah, 4th generation, bro. Come on, get with the story.
I'm on the Cerebro, 4th gen Cerebro. It's got the bigger screen. It's lighter. It's made of aluminum, and it also comes with 5G.
5G, man. Get ahead of the game. Get on that 5G before the rest.
Yeah, it's an interesting little backstory that you're getting, because the history of Cerebro has usually been kind of left relatively ambiguous. I know that Forge had a hand in some of the earlier iterations, but I always thought that it was more of kind of like Charles's brainchild, with like the application and actual build design coming from someone like Beast. And this like flushes out more of like Forge's involvement and actual design and development of this and previous versions of Cerebro, which is pretty cool, because that's some like backstory for Cerebro that you don't get too often. It's more of always just been like an important piece of plot machinery that existed in the X-Men mythos alongside almost every story. But now we're getting some time to like flesh out what Cerebro is and what Charles plans to do with it from this point forward.
Yes, and Xavier wants to upgrade, and this is the upgrade that allows you to imprint psychically the minds onto a shell, which we seen last issue in House of X issue number 5. But now in year 1, it's just a concept to him, and he's trying to talk about this concept to Forge. And he talks about how Henry's an empathetic man, but he's unable to approach the subject with his expertise, and he needs Forge's help for this.
Yeah, like Beast is someone he can rely on for practical engineering and baseline designs of different types of machinery and technology. But when it comes to it, I mean, this is really what Forge's powers for, is inventing. That's like that is his mutant power, is his ability essentially to invent concepts and applications from machinery that already exist in ways that typically wouldn't be common. Like he can revolutionize them, and they kind of go into detail with that when they like speak more on like the things that Forge develops, not only for Cerebro, but when he gets his hand on Shi'ar technology, he also starts to improve and revolutionize current technology being used by Charles and the other members of the X-Men. It's really cool. I like that Forge is getting like a real nice lean right here, a nod to his like his ingenuity. I mean, sure, it's all kind of a cheat because Forge isn't brilliant on his own. He's just intuitive in his design prowess. It's not like an intelligence. It's more of like his mind makes the connections for him, like as if you had like a calculator in your brain that could just do the math for you real quick, offhand, without you actually having to think about it.
Right, exactly. He very much plays this like, and even Hickman writes this in a way where he's kind of showing you almost like a crash course in like the basics of what like a CTO would do in a company, where he's all like, he goes into like redundancy and like you need backups essentially, and like how systematically like especially in computation you need to have a backup of a backup of a backup in case something goes wrong, in case anything any failures happen. It's just good practice, and he kind of goes into that with you a little bit, and then he goes like you would need like at least one or two backups, and Xavier's like 5. I'm gonna need 5 backups.
Yeah, I like how he even wants one of them for like a specific clandestine location that like is secretive, and he's like, "That's my failsafe backup."
Yeah.
That one to be the most important one. It was really cool, and you're right. He used an interesting way of writing to show you like how Forge's deductive reasoning is. It's not like he starts from the ground and works his way up. Like Forge takes the idea and he reverse engineers it and into being. Like he says, like this is what we can do. We just need to figure out a way to drive what you have towards that end game. And these are the things. These are the things that we could overcome when trying to build this technology. And this is what you should do if you want to have the most fulfillment out of it. And Charles is like, yes, I do want that, but let's take it a step further. Can you go further with it? And that's the cool thing about Forge is like you can brainstorm anything with him and he can fucking just make it a reality. He can lay it out. And he was getting kind of excited too, because Charles is like, I want to get unconventional with it. And Forge is like, now you're talking my language. Like, yes, let's go off the beaten path. Let's design some more radical technology. And he's like, let's implement Shi'ar technology. And Forge is like, yes, like let's get alien with the actual technology we're implementing. Let's get biomechanical. Let's start to bridge those lines. Because he's a good mechanical engineer, but biomechanics is more usually something like Beast's field. But that type of technology that we have doesn't lend itself as well to transition into a biomechanical range. Whereas the Shi'ar Empire is all about that kind of stuff, as we find out more with like the crystal technology and a lot of other different things. This is great.
Exactly. Yeah. And this very much piques Forge's interest, and he's just Xavier's just like, "Well, you build this for me. Are you going to build this for me?" And you just see Forge smile, a smirk, and it's
Can
great.
you do it? He's like, it's not when we build this. It's like, are you going to build it? And it's just like, can you rise to the challenge? And I think he's just goading him. I think that's all Xavier's doing. He's like, he knows he's got Forge, hook, line, and sinker. But he's like, he's just gonna add that last little layer on there to get Forge like on his path, to get him hit the ground running.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So moving on, we're led into Hickmanism, and this is a Hickman. I need a name for what these are, because it's charts sometimes, but sometimes it's just facts, and sometimes it's just writing.
Yeah, sometimes it's like it feels like an actual like key for like a science like reference, or like a legend like you would see on a map, or like an actual legit graph for something like in a mathematical sense. But there's still, it's a large width of different variety in some of these graphs. Some of them similar, but usually we get like a something unique in every issue.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love it. I love it. So in this one, we're talking about Cerebro, and specifically, he starts off with version 7, originally powered by the Shi'ar antimatter engine. The current build of Cerebro now runs on Krakoan no-place vent, converted by Forge to act as an unlimited power source for mutants living on the island. Shi'ar logic diamonds still remain the primary source for data storage and are also how Sinister's DNA sequencing is cached, which we just discussed last page. Also, are these Shi'ar logic diamonds? Could these be the things that, remember we were talking about the crystal USB drive a couple issues ago?
I think so.
I wonder if these are actually what they are.
I thought the same thing as well, actually, is that they are the same, either the rudimentary form, because I mean
Or at least, yeah, the
yeah,
foundation of it at least was Shi'ar tech.
yeah,
Before it
because
evolved.
that crystal itself was implemented in a much farther timeline, but this seems like this is in line with that level of technology and that type of development. So I feel like that was an actual legitimate nod to the same mythos, to the same type of tech. It's like, Hickman's doing some good bookkeeping here with even his his little tech references and his little tech uh nomenclature, if you will, like how he references it, the evolution of people, the technology that is around people, the technology integrated in the machines themselves, the AI tied to it, like all of that stuff evolves in its own little unique way, and you can look to each one and see it kind of isolated in other parts of the stories in little throwaway nods like this, because that's really what it was. Is like, why else would they focus so much on the Shi'ar technology if it wasn't something that they were already using prevalently in the future? So it's a good kind of a back and forth nod. Like they might reference, or Hickman will reference something earlier, and then later on he'll come and fill in the blanks for that in a way where you're like, oh, you know what? Going back and reading those stories is actually very advantageous because you get a lot more of what everything is and how it fits in the greater mythos. It's really cool here, and this whole computer tangent is really actually important and relevant to the storyline. It's not so much of like a waxing and waning of like tech ideas, but more so a celebration of this new world of technology that Hickman is building in his mythos and how it's going to be the mainstay for how the X-Men use a lot of their normal tools coming forward from this point.
The Krakoan no place event, they don't really explain it, but I just assume it's just a thing that was created as an unlimited source of energy that is a replacement for the Shi'ar antimatter engine.
Well, the no place zone is an actual thing that I believe they flesh out a little bit in the actual geographical location of Krakoa. So, like, the no place zone is, from what I understood, functions as a tumor within Krakoa. It's an artificial
Oh, right.
location
Yes.
that's forced into Krakoa's existence, but does not have any actual connection to the symbiotic network that Krakoa is for the rest of its actual physical location. So this is like a place where Xavier and Magneto can go and be disconnected from the weird symbiotic connection that they normally have with Krakoa. Because every being and creature is attached to Krakoa in some way, and as they flesh out later on with Black Tom Cassidy, that we find out, like there is like a constant thumb or a constant finger on the pulse of what's happening in Krakoa. So this no place is actually very significant for Charles and Magneto to continue with what they're doing without too many people being privy to it.
Mm,
As well as the unlimited power source too. It's important to keep that there because then
yeah.
they keep that under wraps.
Damn, that's so smart. I
It's
didn't
a
even
good,
think about that. Yeah.
it's a great world Hickman's building here. It's a great world. I
Yeah.
am seeing it as it unfolds, and I'm really pleased with what he has done.
Same here.
I am entertained.
Forge is showing mastery in Krakoa tech, and he continues this kind of. He just continues to improve his skill from traditional machines to biological machines, and he's starting to learn more and more about Krakoa and creating more in technology and whatnot. Moving on to functionality, uh, we learn that Xavier copies the latest version of every mutant mind to the multiple redundant cradles once a week to all of those 5 locations that he mentions backed up. Every single mutant. their memories, how they feel, everything backed up once a week.
It's a
And-
3-hour total process that he does once a week.
Yes,
So
3 hours
start
total.
to finish, it's like that one. It's just the whole backup process, 3 hours, and then a week later he'll do it again, another 3 hours. It seems
Mhm.
like that's the routine.
Yeah. You think he has hiccups in the system, like render farms and stuff like that? If they mess up, it's like, oh shit, it's fucked. The whole thing's messed up. You guys start over.
Or they got a personal level, like what if something happened in like the last week that was really important, like over the days, and then you die and they back you up to that week earlier, and that whole week is just gone. Like,
Yeah, you could
a
have
lot could
learned a
happen in a
lot.
day, let alone a week, you know?
Yeah.
But then also, it seems like this is them trying to make it. This is a very weird concept, but they're applying it in a very grounded way for when it comes to how people traditionally back up servers and data throughout that type of that type of hardware management.
Mhm.
And I like that it's being applied to such a wildly sci-fi concept.
Oh yeah.
In almost a very like too realistic way to where like, well, I guess this type of backing up wouldn't be as likely. I mean, if you're backing up people, you'd probably do like a live constant backup. Like look at how you have like you can set your Google Drive or your live storage to upgrade or update in real time. So anytime you
Yeah.
make a change to it, it'll update it, and your cloud space storage will mimic that update in a constant real time. Whereas Xavier's like, I'll just do it once a week. Just do it once a week. He's just like very lazy about his data backup, and that data that he's backing up is literally the entire collective psychic consciousness of the mutant population.
It's like taking a giant dump.
Yeah.
A giant psychic dump.
That's why
It's
it takes so long. It takes 3
ah.
hours, and you only do it once a week. It's very painful. He's like, I just can't do this. I'm tired. Like, who gives a shit about what happened in this week for you? Have you ever had to push out the entirety of the mutant psychic collective embraced like consciousness? Like, do you know what that is? Do you even understand? Like, he can have like kind of a Rick and Morty style rant. Like, can you even grasp this? Do you even understand?
You think a woman has it bad?
Oh God, no.
Yeah, I went there.
He's like, try birthing the entire collective consciousness of your people and then come talk to me.
Yeah. Talk to
Xavier
me.
out.
Drops the mic. Drops the Cerebro.
Yeah. Picks up television drops. I'm out of here. I don't have time for this shit. You people are beneath me. I am a god. I'm a golden god. Oh jeez. Yeah, this is really cool. This is a really cool like foundation or framework that Hickman has put forth to kind of like keep them to. And I can accept it. It's a very simple way of doing it. Like remember last time when they were doing this really like rudimentary way of trying to prove who everyone was when they
Yeah.
cloned them? Like I feel like at first you could be like, well, this is flawed, and anyone can come through and say like certain things, and like, is this really an objective way to critically find out if anyone is who they really are? Or is this just a poetic license moment that Hickman is being very straightforward with and saying like, no, these are who they are. You just need to suspend belief and accept this right now so we can move the story on. Like I'm doing this in a simple way to show you like this is how this is going to work without any smoke and mirrors. I'm not putting a red herring here. This is just really simple and really straightforward. And that's why it almost feels like you can look at it in a more complex way and pull it apart because you're bringing complexity to something that Hickman is trying to keep simplistic. And this whole moment here with the weekly 3-hour backup, you could break it apart with complexity, just like I was saying, and the other moments as well. But that is not what Hickman wants to do with this moment. Is he wants this to be a much more simpler moment. He has his moments where he makes things get very complex and has a lot of hidden nuances that you have to dig through, but that is more for the story when that comes. Like this part is just a building block. This isn't meant to be a story turn. He makes his story turns very known, and when he's being very straightforward and bland and like kind of not even bland, because I don't want it to have a negative connotation. I want it to be more like represented as like he's just trying to keep it simple. He's like, here's a simple building block. It's simple for everyone to understand. This is how this device works in this world. This is how this concept works in this world. We don't have to break it down and read past it any more than this. And that's why he does it this way. He's gotten so perfect at his ability to write the story and flush out a quick nod for you to understand versus a deep, hidden, nuanced nod. And I like that. And I like it's easy to spot too. So it's like I can really just jump into like what Hickman's writing and follow it through and continue on to the next story with ease. Because you if you were gonna break this apart, it would fall apart real quick. But you can look at the way Hickman writes with these particular like tropes and little poetic licenses and understand them and get what he's going for and not feel cheapened. Because he's like trying to meet you halfway, and he's like, "Yeah, no, like it's ridiculous, but this is the rule I'm setting forth." You're like, "Okay, I can live with it, Hickman. Good job." Get to that twist, Hickman. What's that twist? You're building up all this like simple, basic understanding stuff, so you can then throw a huge twist on top of all of it.
It's coming.
Yeah.
And then once a year, Xavier does a hard backup of each mutant. And unlike the weekly backups, this process is a fresh copy of the whole mind and takes 3 days, during which cannot be interrupted and Xavier cannot be disturbed. See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, what happens if he, like, sneezes during the process?
What's the what's the level of like dedication like without getting like errors and redundancies throughout like his entire data like feed that he's feeding from his psyche to the actual storage? Like, is there anything like a hiccup or a network connection error that he has to worry about?
Right.
And then all of a sudden, like when he clones Beast, he has 3 arms, and he's like, "Oh, how did that happen?" Oh shit! I remember now. I had that sneeze, or like, or Wolverine wouldn't leave me alone. He kept bothering me. I'm working here, man. Do you understand how important my job is? I don't care about your existentialism, Wolverine. Leave me alone. Oh man, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, I like that it's broken up into different routes of how he backs it up and how he stores it. So it kind of shows you his job and his purpose throughout the time of how each day-to-day moment is critiqued by everyone else and his involvement in it. Is like Xavier's there and he's running the show, but then he's also like holding up this crazy Phoenix level recovery system that he's put forth for the mutant kind to have as a fallback. Like, he's propping that up with his sheer will. I mean, sure, you have the 5 that make it a reality, but it's the backbone of what Xavier's doing that makes it truly something unique. Because you can make the clones of everyone, but they're not going to be them unless you upload what Xavier has to from his end to the actual Husk end. And that's why he's so significant here. And it's really worth noting that he's doing a lot to keep this going on. It's crazy stuff.
It's crazy stuff. Hickman notes that there's been no experimentation regarding what happens when you combine the mutant mind with a husk that is not their own. It is believed that unless a mutant has some primary or secondary ability to overcome the potential damage such a mismatch would cause, it's likely to be harmful and possibly fatal, which possibly touches on the people that we see in the future.
The chimeras.
The chimeras,
well, yeah, because they had the generations of chimeras, so that's probably that kind of linking to this. Yeah. Is it like maybe the first generation chimeras were not very stable, not very reliable? The second generations were maybe stable, but not as powerful. And then the third generations were like the perfected versions, and so on and so forth. Now we're seeing it here in the infancy, and it's true infancy. Like, they haven't even thought about the stuff that we've already seen revealed. And I like that. It's that reverse engineering that I was talking about in Hickman's writing. It's bringing the future back to the past.
Exactly. And he also notes, which is kind of funny, it is possible for a telepathic operator to replace their own mind with the previous version, but doing so is incredibly difficult and would likely require a skilled and experienced operator. Charles Xavier has done this twice.
Yeah, that's a second note where they're like, "But Charles has done it," and that's kind of where the cool thing is here that you can take away from all of this is that, as absurd as a lot of this is, the concept of someone supplanting their psychic being into another person is actually nothing new for Charles Xavier. Like, this is something he's done on his own to overcome a death or some sort of removal from existence of his physical body. Like the
Yes.
destruction of who he is never, his physical being has never really been a thing to stop someone like him or a powerful psychic on that level. Like you could say someone along the lines of like the Shadow King or Proteus or Legion or Nathaniel Gray, like Nate Gray from the Age of Apocalypse. Those people, they just like take their existences and their psychic bodies and they put them in the physical bodies of people all the time, and it's nothing new. Xavier's created a system where other people can be implemented to it to run it and maintain it, but he could do the whole reapplying of a person's being and psyche on his own. He doesn't even need him. He could do it himself, and he doesn't even need his body. I mean, they even brought that up in even the movies. Like that was something that the movies kind of touched on, is that when he got destroyed, they brought him back in like a whole twist about him possessing a guy who was a vegetable essentially. I mean, if you have a functioning body that's perfectly intact with no actual medical disorders, that's ideal because though your brain is dead, your body functions, and pop Charles in there and he's good to go.
Yep.
He's a new Charles. And what some psychics do in those situations is they just go into your mind and they make the person look like who they were. So even if they're in a different person, when you look at them, you'll always see Charles. Even if like he could be anyone, he could be like an obese woman, and like he would still look like Charles Xavier, and you never know.
Yeah.
Because he could tweak it like that. And that's a real cool thing here that Hickman not only fleshed out, but he elevated. It's just like how we were talking about last issue about him touching on Mr. Sinister, elevating the concept of his DNA storage into a more contemporary thing. This is now the contemporary twist to what Charles can do with his psychic transference.
Par for the course for Charles, but very interesting the way that he fleshes it out, for sure. All right, and then Hickman goes on to point out where the 5 cradle locations are. These are the locations of all the backups, and
Right.
they're located at House of X, Island M, Summer House, which is on the moon,
Yes.
The Point, and Moira's No Place.
Moira's pod.
Moira's
No place that contains Moira's secret pod.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
so
that pod.
at House of X, that's what? The manor at
Yeah.
Winchester?
Yes.
Westchester, I mean. And then Island M is Magneto's brooding spot. I know that. And then, like as you
Yes.
mentioned, Summer House is the house that's on the dark side of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Moira's No Place is in the middle of Krakoa in that tumor we talked about.
And the Tuma.
In the Tuma. Now, what is the point? Like the
point, I was gonna ask you the same thing. What is the point? God
is
damn.
that the point? To the point? Is that we don't know the point?
I wish I had the map up, the Krakoa map.
Is that Hickman's point?
Maybe Hickman's point is the point, to point you in the right direction of the point.
That was the point of the point all the time.
It was.
Hickman, Eugene.
You're such a genius. Better than Nolan.
That wasn't hard.
I don't know the point though, and I can't find the map at the moment. What issue is the map on?
That was wasn't it in the last one of the House of X, or was that the greater? Actually, you know what? I think that might be further back. Yeah, because I think in the global map that they showed that geography of the different locations that had sided with the deal in the treaty, and then the others that opposed it. They kind of highlighted that with color, but that didn't show. I don't think that showed Krakoa. I'm not sure. Yeah. So the point's just something that we probably won't be able to know about.
House of X is actually not Winchester Manor. Also, House of X is like, I guess, the command center of the island.
So Krakoa then.
Krakoa Center, yeah, proper, I guess.
Yeah. So they have 2 Krakoa locations.
Yeah, one in the Atlantic and one in the Pacific.
No, I mean like they have 2 locations that they use. The Moira's No Place and then House of X.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Okay, so they don't even touch. Oh yeah, because in the earlier issue when they were leaving Westchester, they showed it like overtaken by the trees and the portals of Krakoa.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like their symbolic way of growing out of that location.
The
Which, it's probably a good thing. It gets blown up a lot and assaulted.
the point is not a part of Krakoa.
I figured that as much, since they already had 2 places. A secret one and a known one. It would be kind of dumb to have a third one.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that one hasn't been revealed yet. Maybe it's one of those things, because I've noticed, like I said, there's sometimes that we have to read further to get stuff from the previous issues like explained better. Because you'll look at something that they finally flush out, and then you'll remember, oh, I remember when they brought up the point. Okay, so this is when they'll be there, they'll be in it, and it'll be significant because they're now at the point location, which is a cradle location, like a cradle location, so you can know that going forward. But what the point is, I don't think has been really fleshed out in a significant way.
But one of the backups exists there.
Yeah, it's important enough to have a backup of all mutantdom, all the merry mutants. But yeah, as long as all of those locations do not get destroyed, then Charles should be fine. See, my problem is he put them all in the same plane of existence. He didn't put one in an interdimensional space or off planet.
Just one pocket dimension.
He could have overnighted one of them to like the Shi'ar Empire and had it like put in a locker or one of their numerous crystal storage systems and had it saved. Yeah. I mean, it seems like they could have got something like teleported over there. And it's under lock and key and guard of the Imperial Guard. If I was going to have a crew of people watching over my empire, an Imperial Guard would definitely be the ones I'd want.
Oh, yeah.
They're like the Legion of superheroes, but in the Marvel mythos. There's just like a bunch of A-star characters that are just stacked on top of a team, which is still funny because Gladiator could just do it all.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's like, why not? Let's give Superman the sidekick of Superman. The dose Superman.
Very dope.
Oh, man.
All right, so moving forward, X-Men Year 10, we're taken to the Louvre, and we're shown Emma Frost, and she uses her psychic powers to get all the tourists out of the Louvre. So she could join it. She could have fun by herself. With herself and Magneto and Xavier. And we're met with Xavier, fancy Xavier in his fancy suit. Not his black suit. His black jumpsuit, but an actual suit. His I gotta go outside suit.
Corporate mogul drug kingpin Xavier suit is what I dubbed it. He has that kind of look like he's transitioned already into being like a seedy pharmaceutical rep or like a pharmaceutical like corporatalian. I love it. I love just the demeanor. Like, look at his posture even. Like his pose. Like, it just brings that kind of arrogance and that swagger, and it's just it's great. Oh man, we are getting an Xavier that is akin to none that have come before to the likes before. This is all new, all different, brand new car smell Xavier. Oh man, look at that suit.
It's so suave, Rico Suave, if you will.
He owns that suit. He takes it. And he's like, oh yeah. Or is he just naked and he's making everyone see a really nice suit?
It could be that. You never know. But Xavier and Charles are here, and Emma Frost wants to know what is up. And Xavier wants Emma Frost to help with the help of the Hellfire Corporation to push his miracle drugs to the market. So he wants Emma Frost to be be a pusher. He's like Jack Black and Clone High, just like, I'm a pusher.
Move these raisins. Do it. We're gonna convince all the kids to smoke them. Oh yeah, dude, this is like what we were getting at last episode. Now you got me saying it. Last episode of the podcast, we discussed the issue of that he is now transitioning into his like weird Walter White status of like really getting his empire off the ground. He's not only trying to facilitate the distribution end, but he's trying to facilitate both the black market and on the more legit mainstream market end. He's covering both spectrums. He's like hitting it with the veggies. He's coming at this like, I'm not only going to hustle drugs like on the main playing field, like with the rest of the corporate moguls, I'm going to get the black market too. And that's why he's coming to like Emma Frost, and he's trying to reach out to her because she has connections to not only the mainstream market, but she has connections to people that get brought up soon that also hook him up with the black market aspect of things. And it's a cool plan to have because it really is pretty foolproof in how they approached it. It's a real simple, easy going plan. Like I like how like Xavier's approaching it with a very like simple cadence of like, this is what we're gonna set up first. We let them all know about it. We're gonna line up these dominoes and we're gonna knock it down. I'm gonna implement you. And I like that Magneto's just there, but he also feels like he's the muscle. Like that's another thing I got. He has his words. He says like some that like, you know, Hickman writes Magneto great. And we've seen in the issues leading up to this point, but it really felt that Magneto's role in this moment was like he was the tough henchman guy. Like he was the badass and imposing like Mike character standing behind like the drug lord. And I do like how she called him out on the whole thing where she was like, you guys really want to put a bunch of mutants on an island again? You're going to learn, Magneto? She was like getting all in his face. He's like, stop gathering people to one place to kill it. You survived the Holocaust. Like, what's your game plan here? You just keep putting like mutants in one spot. Wouldn't you be mad about that? Just gather them up. How are you putting them on this island, Magneto? You putting them on a train and you're going to take them over there? You're going to carry them on a train with your magnetism? What kind of abuse do you like to go through? And he's like, enough of that. Like, we're not the same Magneto and Charles. Like, we got something going way different here. Because she's approaching it like they're the Magneto and Charles we know. That's the cool part, is that she's reacting to them how we would react to them as readers knowing about Magneto and Charles throughout the mythos of X-Men. But they're like, no, this is a whole new game we stumbled upon. It's like you got that friend that stumbled onto this unique hustle, and he's like, "You got to get it at the ground floor."
Dude, I got this, dude.
I should have listened.
Bitcoin.
Like
you got that
that's
Bitcoin early.
That's what you say. Like I should have listened to you 10 years ago when you were like, you should just buy one Bitcoin, and I was like, all right, and it was like $100. I was like, I could have just sold that for like 20 G's, but you know, what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
And so Charles is like, you know, you got to understand, we got this new Bitcoin, we got this new cryptocurrency we're trying to push out on the market. If you get in now, Emma, you could be very lucrative and you can make some good scratch. Exactly. And she's like, all right, I'm starting to like what I mean. I'm going to do it for the children. And I'm like, the bullshit you're going to do it
you fuck the children.
Yeah, I like how good that sounds, even out loud. She's like, I like how to, this is how I'll approach it. I'll just say it out loud so people can hear it and I can move past it and get to my money.
Yeah, and then Emma's just like, "What's the difference this time?" And Magneto whips out the product. He's like, Let me show you the goods. Let me show you what we got. This is what we're gonna push.
I'm gonna rack up some Krakoan leaf right here.
Yeah, that Krakoan leaf, that good stuff.
This is fresh off the boat.
So now Emma knows of the drugs being a flower, and the purpose of the flowers and the intentions that Xavier and Magneto has with said flowers. And we cut to Krakoa later, just as later. I assume maybe months later, probably. Not years.
maybe it just turned into like an actual teleportation ring and brought her there, and they were like, hit this leaf, or hit this flower, it's gonna take you to a faraway land. Come with us on this journey. She's like, okay. Sure. Wow, it's beautiful here. That's what the later part was. Oh man, this could really just be 5 minutes later.
Yeah, it could just be 5 minutes later.
15 minutes later, it hits you like salvia. It's quick.
So she tested the product. She was all like, "All right, I'm in. And what's up?" And this is where he's all like, You want me to create the East India Trading Company of Mutantdom, don't you?" And they're like, yeah, we do." And it's pretty fascinating because he's kind of explaining and rolling out like, this is the first step. We need something to sell. This is something we have. And if we sell this, we could build an economy. We get that money, son. We could get that money, that green.
Stack that cheddar.
Stack that cheddar.
We're going to build an empire out of cheese, and this is how we're going to do it. And she's like, oh, man, I like this. She's definitely feeling it, too, because they're starting to sweeten the deal, and she's getting some good things out of it. They're starting to come up with a much simpler plan, because at first they were very vague, but once she was all in, they just started unloading it like a track where a train was rolling down, and in each track, part of the track was getting built as the conversation was going on, and you just see this massive empire of money and wealth just building in front of them. The paneling is great too, like the way they set it up. You really get the ebb and flow of the conversation. They're discussing some good dirt.
Yeah, and once she finds out, we find out that what is in it for Emma, and what's in it for her is Xavier's building this government of Krakoa, and Emma is offered 2 seats on the board. And
the secret council.
On the secret council, if you will.
They've got 2 seats open on the secret council of Reeds. They're hard tickets to get, and we're gonna offer them up to you. I like the background shadiness of like how Hickman will bring in the secret council type stuff in almost all of his stories. I mean, shit, the Shield run is entirely based on the all secret doings of like the inner council, like the Shield members, like, and people going all the way back to like Leonardo da Vinci. And if you want to go that kind of route with it, like that level of secret society. So the way Hickman brings it in here in this moment is a nice little nod, because they're using it not only as like a bargaining chip, but it implies that there is now a greater subterfuge going on in what Charles and Magneto are trying to do, because this whole story has a key point that is obviously, you know, the dealing and manufacturing and facilitating of the products out of Krakoa so they can build their economic pharmaceutical empire. But Magneto and Charles, and probably even Charles to an even deeper extent, have another subplot that they're trying to like flush out as they're building this, and that's where the secret council comes in and what role they play and how they shape Greater Mutantdom. And you're just like, oh man, this whole like pharmaceutical racket is really interesting and unique and different. But then the second you hear about that, you're like, oh, I want to go down that road. Like, tell me, who are the members? Like, what are the other seats? How many people? Like, what is it? What does your table look like? Show me your table.
It's all about the table. It really is. Like, I don't even care about your system of government. I just really care about like what are you using? Oak? Are you using mahogany? Are you using
round? Is it traditional rectangle? Like, exactly. Is it just an empty room like the Reeds had, where it was just with a massive fireplace?
Right.
I don't know, but like that. This is where my intrigue for all of what Hickman has been writing up to this point hit its peak. Its peak, I guess you could say, moment of excitement, where I was just like, yes. What is Charles's real plan going on in here? Is he actually evil? Is he good? Is he the normal Charles, just approaching it in a different way? Like, who are these characters really? And we get some interesting insight here that really pays off well. And this is the beginning of it. This is the nod. Yes. Like, you get 2 seats, and then the bargaining continues.
Yeah, and she's like, why? Why do I get 2 seats? And Charles goes, I need you to bring back Sebastian Shaw and the Hellfire Club. And she's like, I just got rid of him, and you want me to bring back this crazy ass motherfucker?
Like, I just ousted him. You kidding? Like, I'm gonna go track him down and be like, we need you back. And he's got like one of those little tiny doors that you got to crawl through to get to him. And he's like, oh, you came crawling back to me, I see.
Yeah.
Seems like Sebastian Shaw would be that kind of a dick, because he's so infatuated and narcissistic that It's what always brings him down. So, but it's funny when he has to be used and when people need something from him, he revels in it so much.
Yeah.
Like, you need me, yeah.
Yeah, he definitely gets off on it for sure.
Yeah.
And she's just like, "You want me to get the Black King to run Black Book operations into countries who rejected our sovereignty?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, we do. You in?" And she's like, "Yes, yes, I am in. But I'll be needing 3 seats on the board." And that's where we cut to the Hickmanism of the Quiet Council of Krakoa.
Now we should preface this that due to the Freedom of Information Act, we were able to get this specific Quiet Council of Krakoa information, but we weren't able, once again, due to the Freedom of Information Act, to get all the information because some of the council is blacked out and
Yes,
not
it is
revealed.
redacted.
It was redacted. I was like, what am I looking at here? Why are
Right?
you redacting information in your
Right?
own
Your own show.
comic? Like what is happening
You're
here?
just gonna tell me next week.
I
Just
know
get-
you're I was like, this is some
This is a weird one.
this is why people are moving hot on Area 51, you know, like we got to find out what's in
Yeah,
Hickman's
we
quiet
need to know
council.
what was going on.
Oh
Come on.
my gosh. They were too quiet about some of the council and we didn't find out. I love it, man. I love this redacted council because it still paid off. It paid off, but it got me excited even more. And I was like, yes, like this is the road that I wanted the story to start to twist down, and it didn't let me down. It built you it built you up in a nice way, and then it paid off perfectly, and then transitioned into all this interesting little council based subterfuge. Because I mean, take it from the top on the council and bring us into it. Like it starts in a very unique way.
Yes, so it's broken up into 4, I guess, sides of the table. It's a square table. If anyone wanted to know what it is, I think it's a square table.
Well, wouldn't we say 5 if you
Oh,
count
technically, yeah, because you're counting Krakoa as well
Yeah,
as a
Krakoa
part
is-
of the table.
Yeah, which kind of fucks up the whole weather scheme.
It does.
You had some good there, Hickman, but I would have just
Yeah.
I don't know. Krakoa doesn't count. It would just be a miscellaneous table.
So,
Fair enough, though.
So the first side of the table is Autumn, and that consists of Professor X, Magneto, and the third one is Redacted.
Well, we know it's Myra. It's got to be Myra. Yeah, even if you don't know, it's you can at this point with the story, you can easily like be like, okay, that's Myra.
Yeah,
It's Moira.
yeah. And moving on to the next table, the Winter table. All are redacted. We do not know.
Completely redacted, like
Completely
utterly.
redacted.
But I do know on one of them, I think it. Oh gosh, was it revealed later on in the chapter, like who they put into it? I think in this actual issue, I mean.
No, I
So
think it's the next issue.
Oh, I thought we get one nod at the end. I couldn't remember if there was an actual nod at the end of like someone who was going to be put in there, like that they were already trying to flush out for one of them, and that it was pretty obvious that was going to be in the winter like council. Oh no, you're probably right. That is probably the next issue, because they don't give away the entire winter council, the entire summer council as well.
Right. Exactly.
Because when you start from the winter and go on to the spring, that's the only part where they start to reveal stuff again.
Yes, so spring consists of Sebastian Shaw, Emma Frost, and that third seat that she got, which is redacted at the moment. And as you mentioned, summer is completely redacted. And then the fifth is Krakoa, which consists of Cypher and Krakoa, essentially, because they could hear and see everything. So they have to technically be a part of it.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, they can't. They want to try to keep them out, but they can't.
Yeah.
Until they outweigh their usefulness.
Yes. And it is unsure of whether or not this council will be in place or it is simply temporary and will a temporary form of government that should be replaced in the future. Unknown at the moment.
Now, approaching this in an objective way, would you easily be able to interpret who would be in the spring council as the third? Like, do you feel like that? Now, if I want to be objective as possible, seeing Celine in that earlier panel would make me think that the Spring Council would have Celine in it, because she's also been a part of the Hellfire Club at one point.
True.
She's the
Yeah,
Black Queen.
Celine would be, yeah.
Yeah. So I would see it as her being relevant to that. But that's just me being objective and looking at this like kind of breakdown of how they started to set up and like allude to what some of the factions will be. Now the summer one, that one would just be too easy, but I would just say it would be a bunch of Summers children and Scott Summers.
Yeah.
And it'd be Scott Summers, Rachel Summers, and maybe like I would just assume Nathaniel Summers. Yeah. There you go. The Summers Council.
The Summers. That's gonna be a sitcom soon.
Yeah, too many Summers.
It's gonna be too easy.
Too many Summers, man. It's hot. It's too hot in here.
Too hot, man. Too hot.
But yeah, see, that's the only thing I could take away. And like I said earlier with Autumn, like that would be the easiest to just look at it and say like, oh, well, that'd be Moira because she's the third piece to this puzzle.
Yeah.
Fucking Douglas Ramsey getting catapulted to the top of the order by being the most useful power in the most irrelevant character's body.
Right.
Just here. I coattailed my. This is Hickman's Dark Shadow Council of the House of X universe, and one of the members is Douglas Ramsey. Just wanted to highlight that before we move on.
This is true. These are facts.
Yes. Now go back to the 80s and think that is Cypher ever going to be anything more than their calculator?
Give it time, Cypher. You'll have your moment.
And Warlock's like, I can't wait to shine, and it's like, oh man, you'll be Douglas's right hand man soon enough. Oh jeez.
So moving on, we skip to X-Men Year 10, and we're met with Xavier, and he's about to start a summoning of the sorts, where he's gonna speak to the people, and he does that. He starts speaking to Sinister and what's his face that I can't think of his name right now, and
you're talking about Exodus, right?
Exodus, yes, thank you.
Oh, and like all the acolytes hanging out.
And all the acolytes are hanging out.
And their traditional acolyte get-ups that have not changed since like the 90s.
Yes.
Rocking their acolyte. Like it's like they came right off of Asteroid M. It crashed, and they just showed up here. They've taken some interesting humanizing approaches with Exodus. Have you noticed that he's not even red anymore?
No,
he's the most palette normalized version of Exodus I've ever seen. I mean, normally he's like super ripped and big, like to a point where it's almost exaggerated, and bright red.
Yes.
Like red Hulk red, like that kind of palette.
Yeah.
But here he just looks like because he's French, correct? He's like from like the
French or Brussels, which is French speaking.
Yes, exactly. During those like kind of Norman transitions, all that stuff, from like Normandy and such. I get what you mean. Like, so it would probably be some sort of timeline in like I think 14th century that he was introduced, and he looked more like this when he became a more drawn out character when they were showing like his backstory. But when his character developed, he just got redder and bigger and angrier. I guess like the exaggeration of the 90s boiled a little hard into comics, and I guess that's what probably led to his transition. And I think them trying to ground this and bring it full circle is what led to them illustrating Exodus in such a basic way. Yeah. But I love his clothing and his color design. That complements it. So you normalize him as much as possible.
Gold, and black. Yeah, it looks nice. I dig it.
Oh yeah, and that's meant to impose a lot, because with like comic books, they use the color schemes to imply a lot of particular motifs. Like the purple means like nobility, like royalty, and then the gold also means like a level of like prestige, and then the black is supposed to be more of like an endearing, like more of like a strength, like a strong abyss. Mm-hmm. It's more something unique to his color design, and they really did a good job with it. I really feel that if you didn't have this new team working in such a fashion, like in a symbiosis, and how they develop these characters and portray them, like the story would be good on its own, but not so visually like enthralling, because it's just that level of an enthrallment. It brings you to the image and you look at it and you're like, holy crap. Like they're drawing these characters that I've taken passively for years in a way that actually looks cool. Like, look at the acolytes have their normal traditional acolyte gear, but that looks even cool. Like it's still
It's
they've
nice.
never, yeah, they made it look cool, and it's still the same design. They just like the colorization and the penciling really complement it.
Yeah, and then he's talking to also he's talking to Omega Red, which look at Omega Red's design. I found that pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, after Sinister in the next panel, yeah,
After Sinister, yeah.
They go to Russia in like a little transition, and you get that new modern Omega Red design, and there's a bunch of other Omega like characters that are adjacent to him. I'm not as familiar with those because those got introduced more recently, and I love their design and how they're this kind of like very, I guess you could say, has that unification but enough variety, but it's still like a unified militaristic type mutant organization. That's how Russia handles all their mutants, because it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
we don't really have like an Avengers team proper. We have a bunch of mutants that we co-opted into working with us or dying. We're just like, you either join us or die. That's how like Colossus was introduced. Like,
Yeah.
Colossus is just like the Russian government's like, you essentially are a weapon of the state, or we kill you, or we take your family, or we do whatever we can. And so that's why a lot of the Russian mutants always end up with this kind of design or demeanor or this weird militarized unification. But the modern Omega Red, that I do appreciate. I mean, sure, going back to like Marvel vs. Capcom in his more traditional cartoony 90s design, like the nostalgia is there and I appreciate it. Also with the animated X-Men series, like that is Omega Red to me. But this new one, I got no problems with it.
Looks
I
cool.
think
I dig it.
it is definitely on point for making Omega Red look like he's to be taken serious. If he looked the same, it's like I think only old school Sabretooth could pull off the old school Sabretooth look in the modern era, because he's just like an animal behind it. Whereas like
Right.
if Omega Red still had his traditional look, it's like with those massive shoulders, it would just, I don't know. I'm like, it looks like a World of Warcraft character. Like, what's happening?
Sure.
So I like this. I like that they're even reaching out to them, because the Russians are going to be like, nope, we don't care. We want no part of this.
Yeah.
As you've seen in like the voting and how they accepted the treaties, like they didn't want no part of it.
Yeah.
But still, that's a nice little nod to that part of the mythos.
Exactly. And Xavier's just he's just extending the welcome to Krakoa. He's letting everyone know that they're welcome on the island, and anyone's allowed to come, any mutants allowed to come in. But he's talking to all these mutants, but then we cut to Atlantis, and we see that Charles Xavier is also communicating with Namor, the Submariner, my boy Namor,
Motherfucking king of the ocean.
motherfucking king of the ocean, destroying universes when others couldn't.
Yeah, exactly. Making the hard decision for all the multiverse. Oh yes, Namor. Hickman's always written Namor in an enjoyable fashion. Every time he puts him into a story, he does not pull punches with him. He puts him full Namor. He doesn't like. It's not Namor showing up and being like indecisive about things. It's not Namor sitting here going like, "Let's talk it out." It's Namor going in and like going like, "Well, I'm a king, so I'll just decide what I want to do, and then we do it." And it's playing out in real time.
Yeah.
Watch. So now he gets brought in, and we now get to see like the breakdown between how Charles is going to approach him. Because as you can see that they were leading into, all those people we discussed, Sinister, Exodus, and going on from there, from even Omega Red, those are typical like foils to the X-Men's group of weary protagonists. And seeing them have the olive branch in a way extended out to them in a fashion that Xavier did is kind of not unheard of because they always try to mend the fences, but it is more of a direct approach after the fallout of what he already put forth. So he created this new precedent. He created this new precedence with the mutants, and right afterwards he followed through on his word and said, like, that wasn't to save face with the humans, or that wasn't to just put on an act. Like, all of you, I'm reaching out. I mean it. Like, I'm extending a personal olive branch to you individually, so you all can understand that this is a new era. This is a true united mutant era. This is not just a idealized political era. This is like, fuck it, we're just going to be in it. We're all in it together regardless. Whether you guys want to join us, we're still reaching out to you. And now we're seeing it culminate to like these characters making their decisions and trying to understand it, and now him coming to someone who's at the top of that list that has always been in a juxtaposition, not only because he's a mutant by some strange occurrence in like the Marvel mythos, but also because the fact that he is like essentially the ruler of the other part of the earth, which is ocean. And trying to convince that kind of understanding to him doesn't seem to always work out. I mean, look at Utopia. That worked because Atlantis was essentially already underneath it. So like, Namor was like, of course I'll defend this land. It's in my territory. Like, my kingdom is right here, so whatever. I'll defend the seas around Utopia. But he was just a mutant by birthright, not so much in, like, his true motivations. Because how many Magneto-level type speeches do you remember from Namor about being a mutant? It's not his thing.
Not a thing, yeah. He didn't do that.
So now we're getting
like, he's very like very much like Wakanda and Black Panther in many ways, which is why I guess they hate each other.
Yeah, because they're two kingdoms, and kings don't like to bow to other kings.
Exactly.
So you get a crossing of paths here. Now Charles is approaching him, and like you see like a new era like begin right here in this moment, where it's like, well, let me tell you what we're doing, and then now you get to see what Namor is going to say in response, and that's, the story is heating up in this part. This is where some reveals. Some payoff right here.
Yeah, Namor is just all like, I know the real reason you're here. It's like, you understand that they will never love you. They will always envy you. They hate you, and your superiority will always be a burden to them. And you finally figured out that you are essentially better than them, above them. But I knew this the whole time. I knew I was special. I knew I was better than everybody. So why do you come to me, knowing with this revelation that I've known for so long? And he's just all like, be gone, little man, and come back when you mean it. And you're just like, damn, Namor is dropping some knowledge, because that's what he cares about. He cares about his kingdom, and that's all that matters at the moment.
Yeah, we get a huge revelation right here. Like, in this whole dialogue between Charles and Namor, there's a highlighted concept that Namor flushes out and puts on the floor in front of Charles and says, like, explain this then. He points to the fact that he can tell that Charles is not sincere with his level of tenacity. He is not on Namor's level. Namor is a king that bows to no one and concedes to no man, but he knows that Charles still has some sort of internal moral agenda. I feel like that's what that's highlighting. It's pointing that, like, you know what? There's still the very traditional moral compass driven Charles Xavier inside you, and that type of person was never truly eradicated. You put forth a false metamorphosis, and I see you where you truly are. I know that you are no king like I. And he sent him away in a way to denounce and say, I don't want to play your game unless we're playing to win, which is an interesting thing to note, because it means that Namor still backs the mutants, and he's still pretty much part and parcel with what the mutant kind has to deal with. But he's also realizing that Charles is not ready to face this war in the way that he would. So he fooled Magneto, but he did not fool Namor. That's what's being revealed right here.
Yeah. And that's interesting. That is pretty interesting.
It's beyond what you were going to expect from, like, what was going to come out of this. I mean, I was pretty much led to believe that Charles was in a much more, I don't even want to say sinister, but on a little more malevolent kind of road with his new drive and perseverance. Like, he was going to take some liberties and some sacrifices that were going to be pretty shocking for his character. But now I'm starting to get the feeling like, oh wait, is this part of Charles's bigger plan? And is he still trying to do something that is more in line with the traditional X-Men message? It makes me start to embrace that concept again, and that's the cool doubt, because I was mentioning it last time. It was the line that we're constantly walking where my expectations are getting subverted right away, and I'm falling back and forth. Like I'm thinking, oh, I get it. Oh, no, wait, I don't. Like there's another trick to it, because he's not this type of Charles that we were led to believe. He's definitely something deeper, something more nuanced. And I love how Namor was the one that put it on the table for all of us to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited to see it come back around. But knowing Hickman, who knows?
Oh yeah, we get this now. The payoff is now, but the payoff for that, we're not anywhere near that.
No, not at all.
That ain't happening yet. This is a
But
good prelude, a good pre-payoff.
definitely. Definitely. But moving forward, we move on to X-Men Year 1000, and we are brought back to what was happening last time on Powers of X, issue number 4, where we're still figuring out, the librarian's still figuring out with the elders if they should ascend, because they're still unsure if it's them ascending or just kind of, it's just the whole mind biological computer kind of dilemma.
Yeah,
Is
we
it,
digitize.
yeah,
Yeah.
are we still something within the machine? And in this episode, we're going to see episode. I said it again, and we're brought back to the elder, and the
Yeah.
elders met by the phalanx.
This is the culmination of their discussion. Essentially, like they are now having to make their decision on what is it that the phalanx can offer them, and what can they offer in return to the phalanx. And you see that what gets decided is something that was pretty much laid out with the way the phalanx was presented and how we know they approach biological societies, especially with the stuff that Hickman fleshed out with describing how the phalanx's motivation breaks down. And we get an interesting like transition to what would be the devourment of the of the elders in their physical body. Literally gone. Just one
Yeah.
panel there and one panel
And then gone. Yeah.
just like literally like, and your food, your digitized food. But
Yes.
did you notice that the phalanx returned to a more bipedal form? They went back in that, and it was like almost like
It looks
looked
like
like
it's mirroring the elder almost, kind of.
yeah, like there was like this weird physical simulation that began, like a duplication that began before the actual follow-up of simulation happened. Like we're like, I'm going to turn into you, and then I'm going to take the essence of you and incorporate you to me as I'm doing that, which seems pretty scary from the elder's perspective. You're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And then you're gone. And that panel before the actual disappearance, it looks pretty intense itself, because you could see the actual beginning of the assimilation, like just a small spread, like that little nod you got when you saw Douglas touch those plants. Like you see something like at a little bit bigger scale, like forming on his face. It's pretty cool. His eyes, like wow. Oh man, yeah. It's a very crazy transition, and we're getting a good closure on, or a good bit of closure on this whole like story from the librarian's perspective, because it's been kind of spaced out over a lot of the Powers chapters or issues, and now we're getting like what they were trying to shoot for with Ascension and what this really turns into. But I mean, the librarians were supposed to be incredibly smart people, or the librarian was supposed to be a part of a very smart and sophisticated race of sapiens, you know, or evolved sapiens, but like their ability to perceive what was going to happen here with the phalanx seems almost like shockingly under par. Like they should have known this wasn't going to end well. Like why would they really even care about us anyways? We're I mean, you get this dialogue between the librarian and what essentially is Nimrod, and
Nimrod,
like
this future Nimrod.
yeah, the future Nimrod, and like that breakdown like kind of highlights the fact that like you guys were doomed from the start. The human, or what was left of the human mutant robot amalgamation.
Yes. Exactly, and it kind of breaks it down. It's like, why did they consume or why did they destroy the Elder? And Nimrod kind of breaks it down for them, and it's like they need to improve, right? We built them to improve. They built them to self-replicate. They did their thing, and they kept evolving, and then they eventually, and it's kind of building the layers to what we're going to discuss in a second, which is the universal types of societies and how they built a much bigger, sophisticated version of what Nimrod essentially is, and that it's there to consume and collect all information and all data, and their programming essentially, or their purpose is to consume energy. And even though you're getting collected, even though you're being ascended, it will destroy the earth. It'll destroy you in the process. And is that the price you're willing to pay? But at this point, it's happening, right? So at
Yeah,
this point, yeah,
it's
at this
going
point, it's like,
down.
well, it's happening. It's going down. This
Like,
is
was what was going to happen when the phalanx show up. You know, like this is the out end game here. Like, I love how like just straightforward and candid like Nimrod is about all this. Where it's just like, this is in the math.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you this because I'm a computer. Like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. You fucked
It's
up.
just data. It's just data. Nothing I can
Oh.
tell you.
Oh, but we
You're
get a
fucked.
huge shift though. It changes from how they break down what technology is for computing to what essentially the evolution is for more evolved technological beings. Like he creates the contrast between like you're looking at computer components as a physical material, like a means of metal and machinery. These beings are a biomechanic machine. They are biomechanical organisms that are bled with actual laws of science, like the physical atoms, the physical quarks, the different layers within our physical sciences are being wielded by them in their computing, and they use those as a part of their hardware. This is just if you took your computer and you took out your hard drive and you replaced it with like physical atoms that function in the same way, and they're wielding that, and it's so awesome to see Nimrod breaking it down where he's like, well, I mean, even me in the best sense, it has my limitations, but I'm not using the laws of physics to do my computing. I'm using the laws of human-based computing conceptualization. And that's a really far out concept that kind of
Mhm.
touches in the realm of like quantum computing, quantum mechanics. It's like when you're using the fabric of space and time as your hardware, you're going to get some crazy results, and you're literally getting black holes of information. Like massive,
Literally.
yeah,
Yeah.
like massive like black holes that are just data centers of like so much information the data collapse within itself. It sounds like a VA joke is like mixed in there, but that might be too dark for a subject. So much data in paper collapsed within itself. Oh geez, like this is crazy. Like I love how far Hickman is taking this like sci-fi commentary or contemporary commentary.
All right. So you ready to talk about the societies?
Yeah, let's transition into like what the societies can actually evolve into and like what their breakdown is, because we explained the intelligences or in was it houses Powers of X2, right? I believe it's Powers of X2. That was the end.
Yes.
They broke down the types of like
Human-based
technarchies,
intelligences and
human-based intelligence. Yeah,
computing.
yeah.
Um,
So
and
this is
that's
pulling it back
this
farther.
this is taking it to a whole nother level. So before we move on to that, we are left. Year 1000 ends with just Nimrod saying, "Yo, we're done. We're doomed," and that's where it ends, and that's where we
Yeah.
cut to the types of societies, and we start off with S10 million. Starting off with 10 million, because I think we left off at 1,000 last time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And the SI was like singular intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that we're taking it to the 10 million scale.
Yes, and this is known as a Titan. And a Titan is an interstellar society that has become so advanced that the density of its unified intelligence has collapsed space-time into a singularity. All universal
Whew.
societies exist in partially atemporal space, but unlike strongholds or dominions, Titans are a singular hermetic intellect, isolationist, and not a collective or a group. Like all universal societies on the Kardashev scale, a Titan represents a Type 0 civilization, and we touched on this before.
Briefly, yeah, we did a little bit of like just flushing out of what that concept kind of correlated to how like you have a smaller planetarial society versus like a galactic and solar system based society.
Yeah, and what was it again? He calls it a Type 0
Civilization.
civilization.
Correct.
Yeah, which consists of essentially a civilization that extracts energy, information, raw materials, or crude organic based resources, pressures via natural disasters. So essentially, they harness. They have the ability to harness like the power of the sun. Like,
Yeah.
and energy is not a problem at this
Yeah,
point.
well
Like, we've conquered energy. We're no longer like we're at this point. We're no longer attaining resources for energy. We're no longer working. Like, well, the concept of work is definitely out of the picture at this point.
their physical manifestation of their data has created a black hole. Like they are wielding the universe in a
Yeah.
way that I thought would be top of the food chain, but apparently not.
Apparently not, because
Black holes are just step one.
yeah, to step one. After that, we move on to S. The next one is 100 million, which is referred to as a stronghold. And a stronghold is a small network of connected titans, usually five or fewer, confined to a galactic cluster or a dense collection of stacked galaxies. Unlike Titans, strongholds are not lone wolf societies that seek to avoid conflict with other universal societies. Strongholds are warring factions seeking to actively destroy and absorb other strongholds in order to achieve dominion status and often challenge the sovereignty of dominions themselves. If machines have religions, expansions, and conquests, are all the altar at which strongholds worship. Okay.
Oh my gosh, what in the world is happening in this universe? Apparently, they're just massive, unified, symbiotic, artificial intelligence societies out there that are on the size of galaxies that are interwoven within each other, that are at war with one another or other factions. I don't even know. Like, I guess by concept and in practice here, they're at war with anything that it comes in contact with, essentially, because it's trying to consume and repurpose and control that section of the galaxy they're expanding into, or I should say, just the universe in general. It's insane. Wow. It's still not the top though. It's still pretty
Still not the
ridiculous.
top. We're still moving forward. We can
You're
still move
make
on
up
from this.
you're made up of a bunch of galaxies, but that's only a bunch of galaxies. Maybe what would they say, like 4 or 5 usually?
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Just 4 or 5, and they're unified. 4 or 5 galaxies that are unified. Our one galaxy isn't even unified.
Right.
They've got fucking 4. Or 5, I should say. Yeah, it's usually 5
Yeah,
or
five,
something
five
like that.
more.
But yeah.
So moving on from there, we go to um, it's an undefined amount. The number itself is undefined, but it's called a dominion. And a dominion is a collective of 10 or more titans acting in unison and a control acting in unison to control a particular sector of space in both area and epochs of time, meaning spanning like
Oh yeah, the epoch of
eons,
time.
eons, eons. And while the minimum number of titans needed to compose the Dominion is 10, the average number of titans in a Dominion is much higher than that. For example, the Dominion controlling over Earth space, the one that's about to consume Earth has a collective of 112 titans.
Wow.
it is worth noting that it is I don't know the distinction that Hickman here, but he says that it's colloquial, not godlike, but categorically godlike, and indistinguishable from any mythics of religion, mythic or religious comparisons. What's the difference between colloquially godlike and categorically godlike?
It's not godlike in its nomenclature and how it's labeled, but it is godlike in its
How it actually
prowess. And
functions?
its prowess.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So they don't it functions like a god without actually being a true god. In how colloquially a lot of the mythos would be like, oh, well, Thor is a god and all that kind of stuff. And this is just them being like, well, it's as powerful as gods. And it's that because it became such a massive a massive existence of one physical being. I mean, 112 Titans, so that's 112 galaxies, correct?
Like yeah, or it could even be clusters of galaxies, but essentially, like we're talking galaxies upon galaxies
So
of.
you think it would be anywhere from like you could if it was one, it'd be
Let's just
112,
assume, yeah, let's
or we
just
assume that it's
assume
like two.
that it's a galaxy. One
Yeah, we'd be like,
stronghold, or one titan is one galaxy.
yeah, that would at minimum be still 112
112 galaxies.
galaxies. If you
Insane.
double it, 224. Like
Sure.
that's still fucking stupid.
That's so much.
Literally just rolling it, and they're all one massive creature in a sense. Like you know
Yeah.
how they have that. Have you ever heard about that massive mycelium colonization in Oregon, where it's like a forest that's like contains a 30 mile long mycelium neural network? It's like technically
No. I've
okay.
never
So
heard of this.
all right, that's a 30-mile long connected organism. It essentially would be the biggest organism in the world if you break it down in that kind of factoring.
Mm-hmm.
That's 30 miles long on our one planet. This is at minimum, 112 galaxy long organism that is connected and is communicating from one point. Like if one part of the Titan knows something, or the Titan collective knows something, then the other part I would assume connects to it as well in one way. So you could be on two parts of the universe and they still have communication. That kind of
Yes.
power is godlike. I could see the godlike
Oh
functionality.
yeah. Nothing has traveled that fast.
That's like omnipotence almost in a small kind of a real way.
Yes, and the only thing that a Dominion fears is the World Eater, Galactus, and the Phoenix.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that was the cool little thing that it ended in. Is like, well, yeah, Galactus, because he's Galactus. Hickman loves writing Galactus.
Of course, you got to bring Galactus into this.
And then we get the nod to the Phoenix, which is like the X-Men's version of Galactus.
Yeah. And that is where we leave off, and we end with a quote as always. And in this issue, we get a quote from Neymar stating, "When you see me again, understand what that means," which is beautiful and cocky and arrogant.
That is a Namor. That is what Namor would say, but I still think it would have been funnier if it would have ended with a quote from Namor and it just said Imperious Rex. That's it. It's just because like he didn't notice he didn't say that once.
Yeah.
Oh, but he didn't fight anyone. I guess that's usually like his clobbering time. Yeah. Oh man. Oh, when Hickman wrote "It's clobbering time" in that one scene with the Thing when Johnny Storm was revealed to be alive. Oh, I got choked up.
That was a good one.
I was like, yes, well used. But yeah, I wish he would have done Imperious Rex here. That would have been great. But hey, still a Namor quote, a very Namor quote.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
And that concludes Powers of X issue number 5. What did you think? That was a pretty big issue as well.
It's a great issue. The way it ended still got me thinking though. Like, if they introduced the Galactus and the Phoenix at some point, how awesome would it be if Phoenix Force possessed Galactus?
Oh shit!
That would be awesome.
Possess Galactus to fight like the Dominion or a couple Dominions, maybe.
Yeah, like they could try to take on like a universal scale kind of Dominion. That would be really interesting. Or what if Galactus made the Phoenix Force's herald? Well, the Phoenix Force possesses Jean again. Jean becomes Herald Galactus. The
Ooh,
Phoenix Force possesses Franklin Richards. Franklin Richards makes Galactus his herald again. Together, Galactus as Franklin Richards herald both fight the Dominion. Oh, Hickman, come on! You
do
better
it.
go
Make
this
it happen. I want to hear him say to me, to me, Galactus again.
way. To me, my Galactus. To me, my X-Men. To me, my universe.
Everyone just keeps saying to me.
Everyone to Franklin.
Everyone, where are we going, guys? Everyone's saying the same thing. I don't know where we're going.
Are we meeting somewhere? Are we getting food?
Yeah, what time? Let me know the
Oh.
time, location. Just,
Oh, geez.
uh,
Oh, this was a great issue, though. This really had like a lot of payoff, and you could have done like just the stuff prior to the transition into the time jump to the further year. Like you really could have
Mhm.
just ended it with a lot of the stuff that Magneto and Charles were proposing early on, and the new paradigm that they wanted to put forth. Like that could have been its own issue,
Yep.
but that would have probably felt more like a House of X issue because it didn't
Yeah.
do much with like the weird artificial intelligence and evolution of AI or evolution of the machines that they have to deal with in the Sentinel concept.
Yes, exactly.
That's bread and butter for like powers. You gotta have there has to be a mass sentient unified symbiotic robot like protagonist. If you don't have a robot hive mind, it's not powers.
It's not whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah, but there really was a lot of build up and payoff. I didn't feel underwhelmed by this issue at all.
Not at all. Not at all. It was great. What was your favorite moment? Mine was Namor's cocky, pompous attitude, of course.
If I had to really, oh gosh, I don't. I'd have to say the funniest moment was rather there is truthfulness or it was meant to be tongue in cheek, but when Emma Frost was like, "I'll do it again for the children,"
Yeah.
when they first brought her in, and she said, one more time, then for the children. All right, I'm in. It's just like, was that meant to be bullshit, or is she trying to turn over a new leaf? Because Charles seems like he's actually, a much more true Charles. And I know Emma's had her lines of walking a more guardian and mentor role for the children of the X Force or the Hellfire Club. She has been kind of like a maternal character, trying to mold them, but also, look after them. So I can believe that she has that level of good to her, but at the same time, I want to feel like this is just all a grift. Like this is all like a big like a big hustle they're trying to do, and they're trying to pull this job off, and afterwards it's like an elongated version of Ocean's 11. I would love that to be the case, and then she's like, I don't really give a shit about the children. I just want to make the money. Like in the end, they're all betraying each other, and it's like it's the Reservoir Dogs, and they like fell apart. And she's like, I'm out of here. Fuck the children.
Yeah.
Emma, what about the children? I never gave a damn about the children.
There's lies.
Yeah. Oh, I really enjoyed that though. That was probably my most standout part from the whole thing. That after I remember it, like vividly looking back on it, the artwork stood out through the whole thing. But really, that part was the writing had the most impact on me. Just made me think a lot. And of course, I'll have to give the nod without saying to the redacted secret quiet council.
So
See,
random.
the quiet council, they're very quiet. It's like
So quiet.
they're hush about it. When they talk, they use library library voice. You have to whisper. Shh. Too loud. We can't have anyone here. Doug is right there, and he is a loud mouth. He loves to translate everything.
Damn it, Doug.
Stop reading my body language. Of course, I'm nervous. You're always trying to break me down, you asshole. Man, but oh, jeez.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, and like I said, kudos again to RB Sylvia for another beautifully drawn issue. You know, when I was trying to remember RB Sylvia and then Pepe Lorez, when I was trying to remember their names, do you ever make the mistake and think Pepe Sylvia in your head? Do you remember that character from that episode of It's Always Sunny, where Charlie was working in the mailroom and he's like, Pepe Sylvia, man. He's like, the mail keeps coming for him. He's like, is he made?
I do remember that episode.
I had that
That's
moment
funny.
today where I was like, oh yeah, Pepe Sylvia. Why does that sound familiar? And I'm like, oh, I know.
It's
Yeah,
funny.
that was a nice
Every
little nod.
every time I see these charts that Hickman does, I actually think of that episode of It's Always Sunny with Charlie in the mailroom.
Yeah. It always comes. It never stops. I don't understand. Like, where does it go? Where is it? It's great. Like, I picture him with one of those traditional conspiracy nylon boards, and he's
Yeah.
got one going all the way across the room, tying this and tying other places. He's got pictures of Atlantis, but like they're like faraway shots. Like he's like, Namor is here. This is where he lives. He probably eats breakfast here. Yeah, you know he's got a huge room filled with this whole mythos he's building because he's putting a lot into it. It reminds me of like when you like if you try to make like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign or you try to like put some sort of like DM approach or GM approach to any type of game. There's a lot of world building and like rules that he's putting in that the characters themselves can just bounce off of and like run with you would with like player characters when you put them into a role and like a scenario. You're just like, well, here's my scenario, you guys have to react to it, and then the characters that he's writing can now just organically react to it because he put the rules there. It's like a nice writing trick that he's kind of set up for himself. Just think about it. If you make these rules and you make them so flushed out in a way where they kind of shape the world, when you put a character like Cyclops in it, you can have him act appropriately using his kind of mentality and how he would act against these rules. And Hickman has kind of set it up where a lot of people coming after him can really benefit from it if they don't fuck it up. Just saying, like,
Yeah.
if they could stick to, if this could become the X-Men's Bible from this point out, I can get behind it. But if after this, like, I get that maybe some people may not like it 100%, but if after this it goes to some other new chaotic route where they start to pull from the old mythos but throw away what Hickman's done, just like they all did with Secret Wars, then it's gonna go to crap. It'll become a garbage fire.
It will, and that'll really undersell what all this is building up towards.
And we return to the dark times.
The dark times have returned.
You want Scott Summers whiny and wearing a giant red Speedo? You will get it.
Not my X-Men.
Not my X-Men. Amen, brother.
That's great. And on that, we will leave it here. That concludes Powers of X, issue number 5. We will catch you next week for House of X, issue number 6. We are on the last leg of the race. We're going to see Xavier make an announcement to the world, a very, very bold, crazy announcement, and it's going to be exciting. It's going to be intense.
We're starting the beginning of the end of the beginning.
The beginning of the end of the beginning, yes, exactly.
Strap in for this one because it's gonna take off.
Yes.
And you'll probably lose it real quick.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes, exciting. But until then, I'm Kyle. You are Danny. You is in the person I'm talking to. And
we are all the collective. You are all in my dominion.
Yes. Not the audience, you, as in like, yeah. And
who's on first?
Who's on first?